last comment on pensions, at least for me, and that is that, and it's really only partly about pensions, don't look for consistency within the state. The state I practice in, primarily New Jersey, we're a state that goodwill is goodwill is goodwill. It's a marital asset, and it's distributed. We don't break out between personal goodwill or professional goodwill or enterprise goodwill. And the double dip on a business context is the view of it is there is no double dip. If there is a double dip, it's permissible. Yet we have in it on the pension that says no double dipping on pension. So we have a very different treatment on goodwill and business value versus retirement plans. So with that as a lead into my next slide, question is it a matter of law, is it a matter of custom, or is it a matter of fact? I think the answer is yes. It's all. And I think that we have to be aware that different states have different law, and the same asset will be treated very, very differently. As an example, there's more than a river between New Jersey and Pennsylvania when it comes to valuation issues and support issues in marital cases. So you've got to be aware of where you're practicing, what the jurisdiction is, and what the rule is. Is it a matter of custom? Yeah, I think there's some element of custom to it. Or is it a matter of fact? I guess what I would caution here is that, and we probably won't get into detail on the cases, as the second half of the presentation or so, or the materials, has quite a bit of cases. But you'll see cases that are very black and white. New Hampshire, the Ratty case, says double dip is impermissible. New Jersey, Senecan case, there is no such thing as a double dip. If there is, it's permissible. Does it make a difference which approach to value you use? And one of our questions I've been sitting on it, James Redowell, I think it was out of Florida, asked a question about, or made a statement that it should make no difference how you value the business. And I would agree with him. I would agree that I would not say that you can only have a double dip, or you can't have a double dip if you use an income approach or you use compared to using a market approach or whatever. I don't know that that's a distinction that I would make. I think value is value, and the method that you use to get there generally shouldn't make a difference. My concern more is when you determine what this asset value is it transferable, and is there value at the end of the road? And there, sometimes I look at the DCF model and I ask, is it fair or reasonable to have a terminal value on the end of that? And in a couple of slides, we'll get back to that and maybe take that discussion a little further. If you own a controlling or total ownership interest in an operating business, we cite examples of manufacturing or construction, but it could very well be wholesale distribution, whatever. And labor and capital and equipment provide really the ability to make profit on this company. I think there's less of an argument that there's a double dip, because it's not the income of the owner, the income of the shareholder, however you want to define that ownership interest, that's causing this. And again, I'll invite Rob to jump in here, but I'm less concerned about the risk of a double dip there than I am perhaps in a professional practice where it's all labor of a professional or personal service, however defined, that's causing that value when you take income, subtract reasonable or normalized earnings, and then capitalize it and either with a CCF or a discounted and put a terminal value on a DCF. I get concerned there that there's a big difference, a big difference in those businesses. And to me, a big difference in whether there's a double dip or not when we create this value through an income approach or a market approach, and then also distribute those earnings later as support. So I think there is a difference there based on the type of business it is, the ownership interest in that business, whether it's controlling, non-controlling, and I think that you've also got to look at agreements. And if there's a well-exercised agreement, as I said a few slides ago, and people are bought out, they buy in according to the agreement, they buy out according to the agreement, you may have a problem, in my mind, if you create a value much larger than that when that's all there is down the road.
See plenty of cases where the expert, in my opinion, is creating value of an asset that doesn't exist. That's where I think the problems, practically speaking, lie, okay? If you've got somebody who's interpreting case law, and here it's almost become a custom, to be quite honest with you. The courts are so used to seeing these excess earnings methodologies on almost anybody in any fashion who's making more money than the average person and slapping a 3 times excess earnings multiple on it. The courts and the lawyers, frankly, are surprised if it's something different. And therein lies, in my experience, where the problem lies. And to me, it's not a double dip issue, it's a property issue. So I had to just throw that in there.
Well, I think that description or discussion, property versus income, to me it's in some degree synonymous with double dip. And when an asset is created, maybe too generously and divided for equitable distribution or for equally for community property, and then paid out as alimony later, call it creation of an asset, call it property versus income, I think we're saying in many respects the same thing there. And as a consequence, we've got to be aware of just what backs up that asset, what really backs up that asset, and how good is that value.
Where's the value come from? And I have a real problem with the concept of valuing somebody's reputation, absent any other outside of an operating business context. So if there's no assembled and trained workforce and there's no enterprise for a broad characterization, if there's no enterprise from which to monetize that reputation, okay, and goodwill has a very nebulous definition to it, okay, but if you're valuing somebody's reputation and calling it personal goodwill because they happen to make more money than the average professional in their line of work, that's an awfully short-sighted and I think deficient analysis from an expert's perspective. Okay, maybe they just make more money because they're better. Maybe they really deserve that as fair market compensation for their services because they're just better. And if you're using the median of some kind of salary survey, well, guess what? Half the people in that survey are above that median by definition. Half of them. That doesn't mean they have personal goodwill just because they make a lot of money. But I honestly believe in practice there's a lot of experts out there who would argue that point, that they are trying to value somebody's reputation, and the sign of the value of that is the fact they make more than the average person. And I think that's a mistake.